The Art of Flow.
Welcome to The Art of Flow, a podcast that explores connecting with your body, mind, and soul via movement arts and creative exploration. Through conversations with movement artists, circus performers, flow artists, and fire dancers. My name is Morgan Dalgano, and I'm the creator and host of the podcast, a flow arts enthusiast and a life coach. Feel free to check out some of my other work with individuals looking to get unstuck and discover peace and energy at ignitevibrancy.com. And occasionally, I will bring coaching concepts into the artistic dialogues. The Art of Flow is a free public resource for creators, teachers, and supporters of the arts who are interested in flow arts and fire dancing. It is available for mainstream distribution on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play, YouTube, Stitcher, and at theartofflowpodcast.com. If you believe in a show that provides inspiration for artists and conversations on the creative process, please support the podcast on Patreon to keep it going. As a supporter, you can earn early access full-length interviews, submit questions for interviewees, be mentioned in an episode, and get a behind-the-scenes look at how the podcast is made. That's The Art of Flow if you're searching for it online. You can also follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook to receive shorter clips of episodes, updates, and notifications when new episodes are released. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how's it going, Morgan?
Good. I would love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners today as we enter into the world of Diabolo and juggling.
All right, awesome. Yeah, let's begin. So yeah, everybody, hello and welcome to the Art of Flow podcast. My name is Chris Garcia, and I've been a juggler and Diabolo player for, 18 years now? I think I started in 2003, so kind of losing track of how much time it's been, but it's been a long time. I do also do flow arts and other types of stuff, but I primarily identify as a juggling artist and a Diabolo artist specifically. That's my specialty. Probably one of my favorite props. And yeah, I'm based in San Jose, California. If you're ever in the Bay Area, hit me up. I'd love to practice with you.
How did you get started juggling and performing in the first place?
The furthest I could remember back in middle school, I saw one of my neighbors juggling. He did a 3-ball cascade with tennis balls. And I was like, oh, hey, that's pretty cool. And I just sat at my room on top of my, above my bed for an hour, and I learned how to do it myself. I could probably do up to I don't know, 10 or 15 or 20 throws before kind of getting bored of it and moving on. And then I kind of put my juggling skills away till I entered high school. In high school, we actually had a juggling club. And I was actually really lucky because the high school that I went to had a really famous juggler there. He's a Japanese teacher, and he would run the juggling club, and he would have all these cool stuff. He had the Diabolos, cigar boxes, juggling balls, of course, kendamas, pretty much a wide variety of props, and he all knew how to use them well. And the guy I'm talking about, his name is Matt Hall. You've probably seen him before if you've ever been at Fire Drums or you've ever been to a juggling festival. Yeah, I got into juggling through him. Most of my skills and stuff and inspiration from juggling is from knowing Matt. And yeah, I was really, really lucky to have him as a teacher in high school. The funny thing was actually, he taught Japanese in high school, and I never took his Japanese class, but I was always in his classroom.
That's so funny. And that's really cool that you were able to pick up something that you'd started briefly in grade school and then run away with it as a passion during high school and learn from folks who had been have a lot of expertise and knowledge to share. So
yeah, definitely. It really helps to have a mentor or just some friend or somebody that really is inspiring or helps you to learn.
You mentioned Diabolo, and that's a subject or one of the subjects of today's episode. But what is it?
Yeah, so for some people who are wondering what Diabolo is, you might have heard of it pronounced Diablo. I usually say Diabolo or Diabolo because Diablo, of course, is Spanish for the devil. And when I do gigs for certain clients, they think this guy's going to do what with the devil or some demonic thing. So I try to pronounce it as Diabolo. This is a Diabolo, also known as a Chinese yo-yo. And basically it consists of the yo-yo part and it consists of the sticks. And it's basically a giant yo-yo on a string that you can toss and catch. It's a little different than the normal American style yo-yos that go up and down because the string is detached. So you can do a lot more tricks with it. You can toss it really high. And of course, the bigger it is, the more, I guess, better it is for performance because you can actually see it from far away. So yeah, that's a Diabolo, and that's my main prop. It's my specialty. It's one of my favorites to practice still to this day.
And have you done American style yo-yo as well? Or like do those
Yeah, yeah. I do a little bit. I don't know a lot of tricks with American style yo-yo. And I have gone to like yo-yo festivals and contests around, including like Iceland and other places of the world. But I never got into American yo-yo enough to practice it seriously to get really good at it. So I only know a few tricks with it.
That's so interesting. So it's not like, okay, let me make a mini style of whatever prop I have. Like, let me make mini poi. Let me make a
Mhm,
mini rope dart, and I'll practice my moves with it on the side. It's like they're the
mhm.
way they move through space is different, and they're their own specialties, even though if there's a little cross translation or crossover.
Yeah, it's funny because they're both spinning based props, but the fact that one has sticks and one doesn't have sticks and the size difference is like it makes a huge difference. Like, Diabolos are more commonly found within the circus community and the juggling community, where American yo-yos are just, I don't know if there's American yo-yos, but I know maybe they were popularized in America through like Duncan and other types of companies. Um, those ones are more common like with teenagers and kids because they have yo-yo contests.
Speaking of history of props, do you know the history of the Diabolo?
Yeah, so Diabolo actually has a lot of history and a lot of culture behind it. We believe that the Diabolo was invented around 2,000 years ago. It originates from ancient China, and it used to be made out of other materials other than like common materials like rubber and stuff. But in the past, they used to make it out of wood and bamboo and maybe like horsehair for the string or something. Um, yeah, there's a lot of history behind it. The Diabolo is pronounced different things in different parts of China. The one that I'm familiar with is Kongju, which roughly translates to hollow bell. And the word Kongju or hollow bell because some Diabolos, imagine this was made out of wood or something, they have grooves in them. So when you spin it fast enough, it actually makes a whistling noise. So it's like a hollow whistling bell. So it's kind of more of like a bell shaped in a two-sided Diabolo. These are both Diabolos, but one is a monobolo, one-sided, and one is a Diabolo, which is two-sided. Um, but there's many different terms for the word Diabolo in Chinese, depending on what language, what region you're in. Kongju is one of them that I'm familiar with. The term Diabolo, though, was recoined in, I think, 1906 by Gustave Philipp Hart. I don't know if I pronounced his name right. But that's when Diabolo started getting traded throughout the world, through Europe and through other regions in the Western hemispheres of the world. And back then, the Diabolo was remade with different materials like rubber and plastics and stuff. So it's a little bit more durable. Some of it will still be made out of wood, but more commonly nowadays, you see ones that are made out of like rubbers and metals and stuff like that. Um, they termed it Diabolo from the word diabolus, which people would often refer to the Diabolo as the devil on two sticks. And I also heard another explanation of the word Diabolo as dia meaning diameter and bolo meaning to throw. So basically to throw across or to throw a circle, kind of like when you're tossing and catching. Still a lot of different, like, I guess, historical things to the words.
Interesting. Depending on who you ask, it's either like this thing's really hard, it's the devil on sticks, versus like, the way you spin this is it's just, you got a circle with a diameter and you're throwing it
Mhm.
and you're going to label it exactly what I just told you. So like kind of similar to people picking up now these modern style diabolos, you're going to have different perspectives around it.
Yeah. And I mean, in the past 2 decades, the time I've been practicing Diabolo, a decade and a half at least, I've seen a huge shift in the tricks that are possible. Maybe like 30 years ago or so, two Diablos was super impressive. Maybe with very few people doing three, and that would be like mind-blowingly like top level. And now, I mean, even me practicing Diablo for that much, doing three Diablos solidly, I feel like a beginner compared to people that are doing 4 and 5 Diablos now, which seemed like a meme back then. Like I would go on Diablo forums and they would post edit like like 5 Diablos on one string. I'm like, no, that's never gonna be possible. But now of course it's possible. And it's like, how is that even a thing? Like people have really pushed the art form and expanded the amount of tricks that are possible within the past 20 or 30 years.
That's fascinating. I know talking with other artists, we've been we've had a lot of conversations here on the Art of Flow about how the internet has allowed a lot of sharing of ideas and things to accelerate and pushing of the edge as a community, even beyond the edge that maybe our personal growth edge, as people fall into the same rabbit holes.
I was about to say that too. Like the internet really probably was a cause of the explosion, as of course, like me and you probably around our age, like we saw the internet become more publicly available, dial-up and other stuff. And now that you have like YouTube and everything, like a lot of the tutorials and other like instructional ways to learn juggling or flow, like has really helped people to advance the artwork, the art forms. Of course, festivals too. You see like a lot more flow festivals and stuff now, and juggling festivals are more common. So there's like that too. Just technology in general, I guess, as it evolved, it really helped to push both art forms.
And it seems like you're a part of that. I know your original company, Draco the Juggler, was like performance and entertainment. It was bringing these shows to the public or private spaces. But then in 2012, you rebranded and the Spin Force emerged. And your focus is now teaching and sharing knowledge. So how has this evolved in the past years?
It was more me like being inspired to try to push my skills to be like one of the best, which of course is really, really frustrating. And if you practice the same thing for hours on end, like me learning how to do 3 Diablos, of course, took so long to learn that. It's really frustrating and it's really difficult. And sometimes that can be kind of depressing. And then I guess I had a shift in mentality of wanting to be the best versus wanting to enjoy my prop and to share my artwork with other people, which of course, like there's always going to be somebody better than you. And of course, you do want to push your skills to that next level, but to be the best is, I guess, really taxing mentally and physically and other emotionally. So I guess I had a shift in that. Like I would in the past perform for juggling festivals, which of course jugglers know what tricks there are and how to analyze a trick as opposed to a normal audience. It's funny, they're a really tough crowd because they know what's happening, but they're also a really forgiving crowd because they know what's happening too. So they know how difficult it can be. And if as a fellow performer, like with other people in the crowd, like they're like, oh, maybe they're nervous, so they're, oh wow, they're trying that really difficult thing, and they can at least give like 3 or 4 tries to that. And if they actually get it, that'll be like really awesome. So I kind of like went from that mentality as a performer, trying to do my hardest tricks on stage and trying to choreograph my new stuff and my harder tricks and trying to keep my acts really like top level, to shifting more to a professional juggler, which of course they're not going to care about you doing 5 balls for 5 minutes or 7 balls for however long you can do, or 4 Diablos or whatever tricks that you know, because they don't know the difference. Like, so that was a first shift in my mentality, is trying to appease a different audience, trying to do different tricks that are less stressful for me as a performer. Of course, if you're trying to do your hardest tricks that you may not have fully solid before an act, you're going to be more nervous than doing tricks that you know you're going to get at least 90 or 100% of the time. So just kind of rebranding myself as more of a performer and less of a, I guess, show off on stage as a juggler. Really helped to shift the mentality of things. Back then, I guess also I wasn't really sure with the name Draco as a performer, and I rebranded because Go Draco was my original company name. I rebranded from Go Draco to the Spin Force, and now I'm using the term Draco the Juggler more than the Spin Force, which is kind of funny because I'm rebranding back to what I was, I guess. Because
where does the name Draco the Juggler come from?
Draco actually comes from and back there. There's a lizard, bearded dragon in the cage, and that's not the same bearded dragon that I had as a middle schooler. But back in middle school, I had a bearded dragon, and I named him Draco. And also when I would go on the juggling forums, I would be called Draco Dragon, because that was just like my kid's like alias online. So yeah, I stole my name from my lizard, and all my colors, of course, green and orange and black. I stole those colors from my fire belly toad that I used to have as a kid. A fire belly toad is like a green, orange, and black toad. It's roughly like a little smaller than your palm, I guess, like could fit in your palm. So my colors and my name I got from my pets, and then I guess I ran with it until then. But yeah,
that's wonderful. It's really cool to find out where artists got their inspiration from and other parts of your life.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure of the name Draco for a long time, but I liked it more than the name Chris Garcia, because how many people do you know that have that same name? Like you can find Chris Garcia comedy. That's another person that's in the Bay Area that does comedy. And I mean, I had a teacher in high school that was named Chris Garcia, which is really, really funny actually. Um, so it's just like I wanted a name that would distinguish myself a little more. So I thought the name Draco was pretty unique. So I kept with it all the years. I rebranded to the name the Spin Force just because a lot of objects I do are like spinning objects like yo-yos and spin tops and other stuff. To kind of keep to that like skill set of, oh, this person is going to be spinning stuff. So it's kind of like Spin Force is like a team of people, maybe if I want to expand. Or maybe as an overland company that makes products, kind of gives me more flexibility than just the term Draco the Juggler, which is just a singular person. So that's kind of with the rebranding there. I kind of just wanted to branch out more if I ever wanted to.
That makes sense. And when you did shift from more performance to teaching, now you do both. You do a smattering of the teaching, performance, and kind of hosting and helping organize events.
Yeah. I guess that also. Oh, go ahead. You can finish.
What's your favorite part about teaching juggling, and what's the most challenging part?
Okay, so yeah, let's talk to a little more of the shift, then I'll go into that. So yeah, like in college, or I guess in high school, I'd run the juggling club, and in college, I would also run the Santa Cruz Juggling Club, UC Santa Cruz Juggling Club, and that's kind of where I shifted into all these other places around California had like a juggling festival, and I thought that was really cool. Humboldt Juggling Festival, Berkeley, Demento, down south, that just a lot of juggling festivals in California that you would see. I thought Santa Cruz should have a juggling festival, and being able to run the club through the college, they gave us access to like the gym and stuff. So I started the Santa Cruz Juggling Festival as kind of a first community thing that I started doing, just starting to run festivals for a few years in college. And of course, being the club organizer, new people would want to go into the club and want to learn. So that would be another thing that I would start doing too, is to start teaching people more, to be, I guess, more welcoming to the club. Just because new people who want to learn and want to join may not know the skills, then I don't want to exclude them, of course, if they're interested. So we would have props out there for them to learn. And just every time people come out, I'd like to teach them. And then I guess, yeah, your other question was like, what are the difficulties in teaching? It's hard to say. Every person is different, and everybody has a different thing that they want to learn, which is totally fine. Like maybe some people are interested in learning how to Diabolo, some are interested in wanting to do poi or something else. The first difficult thing, I guess, is knowing enough to teach people in different aspects of skills. So being, I guess, multi-talented in multiple skills as a main person, main organizer, just an event. So I kind of tried to spread my skill set out to most of the props to be able to at least teach the basics with all the props. And I guess the other difficulty is, yeah, people just have different coordination, different ways to teach and learn. So how can you break something that could be very difficult, of course, like 3 balls down to people in different ways, like step by step, and make it encouraging? Like if you just hand somebody 3 balls and you say, here, do this and this and this, and then you're going to learn how to juggle, then that's going to be kind of discouraging if they don't get it after like maybe an hour or something. But if you break that down into smaller steps, like here's 1 ball, can you do 1 ball back and forth? Can you clap between the throws? And then now that you got that, can you move on to the next step between 2 balls? Trying to change something that seems very difficult into small incremental progress to get better at is kind of how I shifted my teaching over the years too, to be more encouraging.
That's cool. And is that the same process that you use for your own learning?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, even 2 or 3 weeks ago, I mean, I went up to the Flow Toys meetup that you go to. I always see you there. And I learned a new trick from Brian Thompson, where he roll clubs on your body. And basically for me to learn that, I had to start from doing 1 single club back and forth to 2 clubs back and forth until I can actually do the pattern of 3 clubs. So, I mean, it's like learning how to juggle all over again with a different trick. It's still 3 clubs, it's a different pattern. And it's like, I know how to juggle 5 balls and stuff, but yeah, I'm still doing like that 1, 2, 3 step. And it actually does help a lot. And it really advances, it lessens the amount of time that it takes me to learn how to do certain tricks by breaking it down and incrementally progressing like that too.
I definitely see the wisdom in doing that. And as someone who's learned some different tricks or tips from Chris in person when it comes to rope dart and other props, it was something that's hard to wrap my head around because I always wanted to jump from point A all the way to like point D without the in-between step. And so being able to slow down, take a piece of time, and then now like try and teach things I know to other people if I haven't slowed down and like pieced it apart and then done it in reverse and then done it the other way. You realize midway through teaching, you're like, wait, I can show you this, but I'm not quite certain how to explain this verbally. So it's a whole new skill set to teach something.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've always heard the term, you don't truly master something until you can actually teach it effectively. So yeah, like if you can actually teach something effectively and break it down, then that kind of shows you that you have truly mastered something. And even then, there's still mastery of something that you thought you knew. And maybe you can find better ways to teach it or different ways that people like to learn with it. That's like, oh, maybe this person learned how to throw 3 balls differently that made it more effective for them in particular because their body shapes are different or something like that. So being more inclusive to different body types and stuff.
Speaking of different body types, you've also taught juggling to kids. What's your favorite part about teaching juggling to kids?
Kids are funny because this new generation really wants instant success. Of course, they are on the tablet. They click on something, they play a game, they see instant lights flashing and stuff like that when they win a game or something or they lose a game. And for juggling and other things, it's an incremental progress. You have to put effort into something to actually learn it and kind of stick with it. And you also have to be open to failure. Like if they're really nervous about dropping or really shy about dropping in front of their friends or something, that's kind of a challenge. But breaking it down to them where it's like, hey, here's this cool thing. Let's learn how to spin it first. Maybe once you get your Diabolo spinning, if you learn how to toss it and eventually with enough practice, you're going to be able to catch it. When they get that first catch, like seeing that as the one big goal, just seeing their faces light up, like really is why I guess I like to teach, just because it's like, oh wow, this kid didn't think they could do this at first, and now they're like jumping up and down because they got their first toss and catch. Like, I guess that really warms my heart just to see the progress and the inspiration that comes off the kid's face. It's like, oh wow, this is something I can actually do.
That moment of surprise and glee and joy and like confidence that also bursts forth of like, I did it, I did the thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's even me to this day, like learning a new juggling trick. I'm like that still. So it's like that, sharing that passion with somebody, like it's really special. And with juggling, it's like, it's interesting because juggling is such a unique thing, and flow and juggling or anything circus related in general is like something really unique. So it's like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's just,
you know so many circus arts at this point. What brings you back to juggling?
I mean, it's funny because I use the term juggling as an all-encompassing circus skill set, which is Diabolo, contact juggling, ball juggling, clubs, poi, everything. Which a lot of flow artists, I guess, use as like an overarching skill set to flow props. But I'm kind of just like juggling is everything at this point. So I guess when I say the word juggling, I don't actually mean 3-ball juggling. I'm referring to like all my skill sets as one thing. So
what brings you back to these skill sets, to juggling arts?
That's a good question. I don't know. I've done it for so long that it just feels like it's a part of me now. And it's just like, if I don't do it, I just feel like, what am I doing not practicing? So it's just like, it's ingrained in me at this point now. It's like that I should be juggling or that I should like be wanting to improve myself. Just that I guess I've been having that mentality for so long. It's just like, you get used to it, having it as part of your life. And of course, juggling is a privilege. Like to be able to move your hands and your body and to stand up and to move around, like that's a privilege. Some people don't have that privilege. So being able to actually do that and enjoying it, I'm really lucky and fortunate to have. And I want to enjoy that as much as I can, as long as I can. I'm going to get older. Maybe I may not be able to juggle one day. So while I can juggle, I definitely want to seize on the opportunity.
Carpe diem, seize the day while you have it. And what tips or tricks, in addition to breaking things down into pieces, would you share with folks about learning juggling, flow arts, circuits arts?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember what I have because I have like 5 things that I usually tell people. Number 1 is know what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to do 3-ball cascade, like know how the pattern works just by analyzing it and seeing somebody else. Number 2 is learn other tricks that help you to learn that pattern, like learn how to throw 1 ball first because the 3-ball pattern is basically 1 ball at different times. So learn other tricks that help you to learn the trick that you're trying to learn. Break it down into steps, like I was saying. So break that out into the 1 ball step to 2 balls, into 3 balls as an example going on. Number 4, keep practicing. Don't worry about making mistakes. Even me, after practicing for 18 years, my practice is probably 90% mistakes when I try to learn new tricks, up until the point where I get that 90% mistakes to a 90% like success or something, or even sometimes like 95. I wouldn't say 100% because I still make mistakes on every trick that I've known over the years. Like you're gonna make a mistake, it's inevitable, but just being comfortable with picking up your mistakes or drops and playing it off, even possibly learning how to play off drops and mistakes. Let's see. Those are 4 things. What was the 5th one? I can't remember the 5th one. I guess, yeah, just be inspired. Try to get inspired by people. Try to watch juggling videos, try to go to festivals, learn different things. And that's how you kind of cycle through. It's a cycle. Do those steps over and over, do them for multiple years. You'll pretty much become like me. I'm good at juggling because I've been doing it for so long.
Thank you so much for sharing your tips and tricks. It's really great to be able to hear things that have been tried and true. Let's talk fire. How did you begin fire spinning?
All right. Fire is an interesting one. I actually got my fire tops back in my college days because I went to UC Santa Cruz and they had a fire jam at the lighthouse, West Cliff Lighthouse, every Sunday sunset come out. And that's where I learned how to spin fire. Being part of the circus community out there, you kind of just learn what happens around town. And yeah, I met a lot of cool people. In Santa Cruz too, they have Renegade Juggling, which is a fire vendor, fire props vendor, and juggling vendor too. So it was really like the perfect city to learn fire because you're right by the beach, you have a community, you have the props that you can buy, and that's how I started. At least I started going out there every Sunday.
And the name of the jam is like Fire University or something like that, where it's
Yeah,
like the
Fire
focus,
University, Santa Cruz.
the focus is really on exchange of knowledge and community. And like I've seen when I've been out there, I've seen all different ages kind of joining that jam.
Yeah, and it's funny because even at one of my gigs over the weekend, there was a person in the crowds that came up to me after and was like, "Hey, how do you get into fire? I know how to do basic poi and some other stuff, but I don't really know how to get into fire." And I basically was like, "Yeah, if you're in the San Jose area, like take a trip over to Santa Cruz on Sunday, go out here, meet these people, and then like just slowly practice out there. It's a good place to practice because you're not really performing. It's just out there hanging out, lighting up, trying to learn how to control fire, not to be scared of it, and other stuff."
Were you ever afraid of fire?
No, not really. I don't think. I guess I had enough confidence in my skills to be able to do fire. I mean, I know when I first juggled torches, that was a little scary because torches are really different than juggling clubs because you can't see the handles usually if you're in the dark.
Ooh,
Um,
yeah, that would be challenging.
yeah, it's like you could only see what you're not supposed to catch, and tossing and catching objects with fire is kind of scary. At least it's a lot different than like rope dart or poi, where you know the object's going to be attached at all times, and it's more prone to like dropping. And I guess that gets into like fire Diablo. Fire Diablo is probably my most dangerous fire prop, um, and probably one that I don't usually like to do much. At least I don't do my hard tricks with fire Diablo. I try to keep it dropless. So I do mostly a lot of my easy tricks with fire Diablo.
And is fire juggling something that you're like personally drawn to because you connect to it in some way, or is it more of a wow factor for your shows and like another skill set in your pocket?
hmm It used to be a lot more about connecting with the fire and kind of just like hanging out, and it's transitioned into I only do fire for the most part, I guess. Sometimes I go to the fire jams and I do fire still to just connect, but I am so busy now that I mostly do fire in my shows, and that's like more performance, I guess.
You just mentioned this. Not only do you have the option now for like nighttime performances or spinning to do fire, but glow LED stuff.
hmm
So the Diabolo is an interesting prop because like how do you make that an LED prop?
hmm That is a specifically, I guess, hard thing to do because with Diabolo, there's a lot of physics involved. One with the spin, the weight of the Diabolo, the weight of the sticks. There's a ratio between the stick weight and the Diabolo weight, where if you have sticks too heavy, and the Diabolo too light, you can't really do a lot of the stick tossing tricks like you see. And vice versa, if the sticks are too light and the Diabolo is too heavy, the sticks are going to fly around too much and not be able to pull the Diabolo around enough to be able to do some of the tricks. And then there's a string that plays a factor in it. The string has like certain grip and certain friction levels where if the string's too grippy, certain tricks won't work. Or if the string's too slippery, also certain tricks won't work either. So you have to have like a ratio between everything for it to work really good, I guess. And that's why a lot of Diabolo players change their string. But the reason I mentioned this is because when you use an LED Diabolo, like one of these, the Diabolo gets heavier and it makes it so certain sticks maybe will play a little different. So maybe sticks that you thought were working normally with a regular Diabolo work a little bit differently with a LED Diabolo. And especially with LED sticks, the stick weight ratio, like usually people want to have a stick around 35 or 40 grams, which is not heavy at all. Like that's really light. And to get an LED prop that light is very hard to, I guess, engineer. To have it be durable and have it be well lit and other stuff like that too. Maybe rechargeable. You would want your props to be rechargeable or at least easy to turn on and off and stuff, or change the batteries out. So getting some type of stick to match the Diabolo with the correct weight is probably something that was hard to find. And in the past, they did have LED sticks on the market, but they were very heavy and they were very flexible. I guess that's another thing I didn't talk about with sticks. If you bend them, like they shouldn't really bend that much. If they bend and wobble too much, it kind of affects the trick. You can feel it a lot. And some sticks of the past with LED, at least, they were very bendy, which didn't feel right. Like too heavy and too bendy, you couldn't do anything with it.
You probably knew a lot of this from spinning Diabolo as like one of your passion props, your main props, but also I know that you designed Diaglow, which are LED Diabolo sticks. Did you run into these issues in your design process? And if so, what else did you learn along the way?
Yeah, so speaking of LED, let's talk about that. I actually designed my own LED sticks because I needed LED sticks for night shows that I was doing. I got hired to do California Great America Halloween Haunt, which is basically night shows for multiple times a night on the weekends with fire and LED. And back then I had those old sticks, like I mentioned, kind of just with a LED taped onto the end of it because that's what I had working at the time. I was like, this isn't usable and this isn't effective, so I have to come up with a way or buy a stick that will work for me.
Yeah, I can just imagine like the tape unwinding or getting knocked against something and then go flying
yeah,
off.
if it hits the floor, it'll break or something. And yeah, like obviously that's not an option if you want to do a professional show. You can't have it breaking on you. And other options out there for LED sticks, they would break very easily if you hit them on the floor. So I had to figure out a way how to make my own LED sticks with materials that I could find. And I came up with Diaglow, which is basically, this is the first version of Diaglow that I have, where you see the ends are very fat. And this is polycarbonate, so it's durable. And I found ways to make the polycarbonate kind of like, what do you call that? Like, you see how it's like not see-through, like it's kind of like frosty. So that that actually helps to capture this light more. Maybe I need to shut off my lights so you just see. Where did my button go? 1 second.
They kind of look like drumsticks for people who are listening. Like this first OG version, they look like very, very thin sticks with caps on the end. And as Chris is describing, they're a bit frosty. So, but when the light shines through them, it's much clearer.
Yeah, so the frost came as a different iteration with the light because I would have them not be frosty at first, and you could see this part of the stick a little bit, but then you couldn't really see other part of the stick. So I had to experiment with that, and after adding the frost, it was way more visible, while still retaining like the durability of a polycarbonate stick. It's funny that you mentioned drumsticks too, because when I was doing Great America, the person that had hired me and put the show together was actually a drummer. So I actually tried to make a set of LED sticks for him that were drumsticks.
That's glorious. How'd that turn out?
It worked a little bit, but I don't think it was durable enough to be smacked around too much. Just because, yeah, smacking around polycarbonate like that. It was a good test for my sticks, of course, but not durable enough to be used as a drumstick, I don't think.
Not gonna last the whole show. Not.
Yeah, I probably would need to use a solid stick as opposed to this is a hollow tube, which is different than a solid piece of polycarbonate.
Makes sense. And these LED sticks, do they change color? Are they kind of like one setting? Tell us more about them.
That's, I guess, where I've had a lot of issue and trouble with the sticks, which is also, I guess, going into like what new projects I have that I'm excited about or that I want to work on. So this is version 1, right? Like you can notice that the stick is very fat at the end. These sticks are actually a little too heavy for most Diabolo players from feedback that I've tested over traveling to different festivals and stuff and having people try them out. They said they liked the look of it and stuff like that, but they were just too heavy. Like they couldn't do a lot of their tossing tricks. These I think are 45 or 50 grams per stick, which you don't think that's a lot of a difference between the 35 grams like I mentioned, but it actually affects the tricks a lot.
Interesting.
And the version 2, which I have here, or version, I guess 3 now, notice how they're thinner at the bottom. So I had to figure out a way to manufacture that. So just like different iterations from a lot of feedback from people from traveling over the world, it got me to where I'm at now with the current version. Let's see. And these are actually just like LED lights that you can find in juggling balls. You asked, are they color changing? The first version is because this thing that fits in the tube does have a color changing mode.
Mm-hmm.
But like I was saying, they're not as usable because this part either breaks off when it hits the floor or it's too heavy to be used when you're trying to do tossing tricks. The other iteration still uses the same lights, but it's a lot more durable because it's one piece as opposed to multiple pieces glued together. It's a lot more durable and it's a lot more lightweight because that shaves off a lot of weight. And it still uses the same light without the capsule though. It's like the inside part of the capsule, which
are streamlined.
Yeah, which unfortunately, this is my, I guess, bane of these sticks is having to change the lights like this with a component that's not made to do it like this. Because I would need to manufacture my own light kits, and I haven't found the connections to do that for something that's the size of like your fingertip. It's really hard to get a light that's that small. It's like chargeable and that I want to have the features on. So I have to find a manufacturer to get the lights to be color changing and stuff for the new version.
Got you. So this is one of the challenge that is part of your ongoing current project, which is updating, expanding, and innovating on the Diabolo based on user feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the next iteration, I would improve the light kits to be color changing and button press instead of doing that weird flipping the metal piece, because this is using still that same LED from the juggling ball lights product that I found on the market that worked the best, that was the brightest. But yeah, I think it's time for me just to finally put money into and invest to try to get custom lights made. And finding that all out and knowing who to talk to is just challenges. I talked to Flow-Toys a little bit, but I got to talk to them more about stuff.
Mm-hmm. And what other current projects do you have on your plate at the moment?
I have so many stuff that I always work on at all times. It's hard to know what I work on.
We'll look back around to that at the end.
Okay, yeah, we can.
Let's rewind a little bit. Back in 2017, you toured. And you mentioned a couple of times like talking to people all around the world. And when you said Iceland earlier, and I was like, oh, I want to know more about that. So what was traveling around the world, performing, teaching, and learning juggling like? And what do you wish you knew going into this tour?
Yeah, so I grew up never having traveled out of California until like 2016. And Portland doesn't count because Portland is a neighboring country. Also, Reno doesn't count either because that's also a neighboring state, of course, like
this was your debut into world travel.
Yeah, so actually 2016 was when I first started to travel, but that was only once, and that was in Vancouver, so I was still on the Western Hemisphere. I got invited out to be a special guest and performer for Mad Skills. So I went to their festival, and that was really fun. It was really fun to explore and be on the airplane and like just like sleep on people's floors and meet new people and all that stuff. Like, okay, well, this sounds interesting. This is something that I've kind of always knew I always wanted to do because I was inspired by Matt Hall, like I told you. He would get invited to festivals all over the world, and he would come back to our high school at the time, and he would tell us about his like adventures. So I was like, wow, you can actually do this with juggling. That sounds really cool, and I wanted to grow up to do this. But it wasn't until 2016 when I actually started to travel. 2017 was my first big tour, um, going to a lot of juggling festivals around the world. First starting off in Mexico to the IRC, and where was that? Mexico City. It was like by Mexico City. And then after IRC, I went to Iowa for the IGA festival. I think it was their 70th annual or something like that, 75th. Can't remember. Then after IGA, I was wondering, should I travel more or should I go home? Because at this time, I had quit the tech industry, or I at least took a break from the tech industry. I was in the tech industry for like 6 years as a game developer at a startup, and I was kind of burnt out and kind of tired of working there. So I just went on this tour around the world. So I was wondering, like, should I spend more money or should I save my money and just go back home? I decided to go to EJC, and EJC, I first went to Berlin for maybe a week or two, which I had to fly through Iceland. That's going to be later in the story, don't worry. But I went to Berlin. I went to like the Catapult and other just meetup groups in Berlin for a little bit before actually taking a bus to EJC in Lublin, Poland. And there I went to EJC for like a week before coming back to Berlin, missing my flights because they were all canceled because the airline that I went through was WOW Airlines, who was really crappy with customer service, and they for some reason overbooked and said, "Oh well, your airlines are canceled, so you kind of have to wait for a few days, and maybe you can fly you out again." I canceled that flight because I found out that there was a rodeo contest in Iceland, which I had to fly through anyway, in the same city that I was going to be laid over in, maybe a few weeks after EJC. And in the meantime, before the Iceland yo-yo contest, rodeo contest, I found out there was a local circus festival in Berlin, like a mile or two from the airport from the station that I had to take to get to the airport.
It sounds like your flight was meant to be canceled, or
Oh, yeah.
you were meant to miss it.
Yeah, so I walked with all my luggage, basically a bunch of luggage. I always travel with too much luggage, a bunch of juggling props, and maybe a few clothes. All the clothes that I have to wear to get on the flight to make space for my juggling props.
YouTube video coming out to a place near you, how to pack for juggling festivals.
Yeah, basically wear as much clothes as you can so you have space for your props is my secret. That includes like 5 underwear and like 5 sweaters. Put it on. You're gonna be hot on the flight, but you'll have enough space for your juggling toys.
It'll be worth it.
But anyway, there was a festival, a circus festival in Berlin, a little bit away from one of the public transits that would take me to the airport that I had to fly out of. And it was really cool because I found out about that Berlin festival from a person that I would talk to from Egypt, a Diabolo player from Egypt that I just met on some of the Diabolo forums. And then he was like, "Hey, there's this festival going on in Berlin. Come check it out." And actually, I like got to meet him there for the first time, and that was really cool. And I got to go to a festival, like unexpectedly, do a really awesome few days of circus like workshops and stuff. They had vegan food even. Like it was awesome. It was such a fun performance. Like, just traveling in general, it's like it really opens your mind up to this like different cultures. It's a big culture shock at first, you know?
Yeah, and it sounds like it's an interesting layer to get to connect with people who you may have heard of or seen in online sphere, but then meet in person for the first time. Plus, you have this intercultural experience where you're like immersing yourself in the unfamiliar. Plus, you're taking in ideas. We were talking earlier about how like people sometimes go down the same rabbit holes, or they get caught in the same ideas. I feel like once that happens somewhat on the global perspective, but there's more variety if you switch what location you're learning in.
And there's so many different styles if you travel out of your region. Like if I travel out of California, like how many people around California do you know that Diabolo specifically? There's not a lot. Maybe Matt Hall, maybe a few others.
Yeah, like 3, 4.
Yeah. But in Mexico, I have like friends that I knew that I talked to, that I've met, that I still talk to this day. And I didn't even talk about EGC, all the level of Diabolo players there who are way, way, way better than me to learn from, which is awesome for a change. to have somebody to to learn from after you reach a certain level. And you don't like have a bunch of people you can share with anymore in your local region. It's just kind of like it gets lonely. So like going to different places and meeting different people really helps to grow yourself as an artist and as a person. And also it's just really fun. Like if you have a chance to travel, definitely try to travel if you can. It is definitely a privilege to be able to afford traveling, but like if you can, um, even if you got to figure out how to make it work somehow, sleeping on people's floors like I did, definitely do it.
And what did you learn from this tour?
A lot of juggling tricks, of course. I improved my LED sticks, getting feedback from other Diablo players, even funding part of my tour by selling all my LED sticks, taking like half of my bag of LED sticks to sell. Just making like connections as a business like that, then people know about the sticks. Just learning different cultures and different traveling, different. I guess I didn't really learn different languages enough because I kind of last minute planned a lot of my travels. I learned to not last minute plan my travels. So I've learned to better plan traveling trips, of course. Like I told you, that one was kind of a disaster. It was a beautiful disaster in how it worked out because I got to go to all these other festivals I wasn't expecting to. Um, but I spent a lot of, I guess, excess money that I shouldn't have spent. So definitely learn how to plan your travels better. Part of that was like when I traveled to the IJA, I tried to save money flying to a neighboring city, which there was no trains or transit to get to the city that the IJA was being hosted in. And I had to spend at least an extra $300 getting an Uber to the festival. So I could have saved money like that.
Got
And then,
you.
yeah, just last minute flights and stuff like that, paying extra for that. So definitely planning out your travels better. That's a big thing.
And nowadays, we're kind of in this in between period where everyone's still hunkered down. There's a global pandemic going on. People
Hmm.
are some countries just don't even have access to vaccines. Others they got more than they needed. They would toss them out.
Hmm.
Um, but do you have a desire to hit the road again in the future?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm hoping to go to EJC next year. To return to EJC would be really fun. I think next year is going to be in Spain, and that's going to be so fun. We'll see if it happens because it's been canceled these past 2 years. Also, the IJA has been canceled these past 2 years too. I'd like to go to IJA next year as well. Maybe do an EGC IJA tour like I did before. Maybe a few other festivals like that as well.
Who or what inspires you in the juggling and floats world currently?
Hmm. I mean, Matt Hall is always still a continuous inspiration to this day. Um, Other Diabolo players who are pushing the limits. Wes Beaton, of course, is always a staple to watch. Zach McAllister, other people. Diabolo community wise, Panzen is a name to watch out. He could do 5 Diabolos flawlessly pretty much every time he tries. He's also a really good toss juggler. Alexi Levion is a really good one, of course. Nico Pyres is an interesting one to watch, who is a performer in Cirque du Soleil. Um, People from the past who still juggle too, Mad French Posse, Pre and Pirouette. There's a lot of different Diabolo names. There's so many to list. Of course, the whole Taiwan community. I want to visit Taiwan at some point because they're like the Diabolo center of the world, Diabolo capital of the world. I want to go visit there someday. Um, yeah, there's so many names to list.
I'll be rooting for you to get a trip to visit the Taiwanese community soon.
I
And
actually got invited out in 2019 to go to Malaysia, which is very close. That was like one of my last big trips. I got invited to do like judging a Diabolo tournament and also to like do a show and like be a part of their special guests like lineup. So that was fun. So
that's
hopefully
so cool. Have you ever been a judge in a contest before like that?
um in local yo-yo contests, I try to hold like trick ladder contests with Diabolo, but it's not the same as the actual Diabolo division contest where they judge like your art style, your flawlessness, level of difficulty, costuming, character, dance style, other stuff like that. Not just the tricks, but actually performance wise, they're judging you as a performer.
That's so
That was cool.
fascinating. And for yourself as a performer and as a spinner juggler, what gets you into the flow state these days? And how's it feel for you?
I still try to do practices throughout the week. So trying to like get my skills like better with five clubs, which could be very frustrating sometimes. That's maybe more of like a discipline practice of hold yourself accountable to maybe do 15 minutes a day of five club practice, and then you'll slowly start to see progress over time. To get more into the flow state, I wouldn't say doing that five club. Well, it's hard to say because if you do that five club practice every day, then you're gonna get into a flow state where like, whoa, how did I get 50 throws? How did that happen? And then it's like you're hitting like maybe 20s or 30s every single time you're trying. And it's like, okay, well, this is definitely showing progress. So that's one way to get into a flow state is just constant, consistent practice. Something very difficult becomes easier the more you practice it. Um, but other flow states, like where you just kind of listen to music and jam out to the music and just like, oh, well, this is really fun to try to choreo to the music that you've maybe not listened to in a while or never listened to before. And then you kind of just get into this weird state where you're like, just playing around. Like it's just pure play with the tricks that you know. Like just having that type of practice, I think, is really important too, as opposed to just doing always strict five club training or three Diablo or four Diablo training.
So you have two entryways for yourself. There's the
Yeah.
dance style, or let's jam out and kind of improv and see what comes up. And then there is the ritual of consistent drilling or practice, and then getting into that, you're going,
Yeah.
it lulls you into it.
So it's funny and interesting that you do mention the flow state. I know as florists, we talk about the flow state. I've had two, I guess, main things in my life that introduced me to the state of flow. One being juggling and flow arts, and the other being game development. I went to college as a game designer, studying game design. And part of game design, we had to study the psychology of flow and how do people get into flow states with video games. So it's talking about how does your level of skill match your level of anxiety. One thing to note, which you probably know, you've all probably heard of the psychology of flow, but I don't know how to pronounce his name. I think it's Mihail Csikszentmihalyi.
Machix high. Oh,
I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Csikszentmihalyi.
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. Okay. Yeah, so you've all probably read that book. He basically defines flow as something where your level of skill meets your level of anxiety, which the more skill you have through practice, the less your anxiety is going to be. And basically there's a line, and there's like the middle part of the line where that's the state of flow, where your skill matches either your boredom or your anxiousness, where you pretty much disconnect. And he kind of defines flow as like you're in the now and you're experiencing the now as much as you can possibly without like thinking about the future or the past. It's just happening in front of your eyes and you're experiencing it. Where it's just like you thought something really difficult that was happening is now happening, and you're like you can see it all unfolding just because I guess you're finally at that point where your skill matches, I guess, the anxiety that you have for the skills or something. I don't know. So there's like that. I've studied juggling and psychology of flow and stuff as a game designer to try to encapsulate that in video games that we make, of course, to try to hook the player into playing your game. Because there is flow states happening and there's teaching happening and stuff like that, and learning happening within video games too. Like that's a learning system as well.
That's so interesting. So for your studies for game design, you delved into flow, but then you've experienced that, in flow arts and in juggling. So physically, experientially, you've also delved into it.
Like we also had to like do studies about like what is play, how do you encapsulate play, like what is the difference between play and like structure, or like what entails something that's like playful versus not playful or something. So like there's that study as a game designer too, because as a person making video games, you have to design a whole system, something that you have to play. It's not something like you're like studying, like you're like it's not like work, but you want to design something that's like addictive or something that's like it still feels playful in a way. Like, do you play video games to collect like hundreds of resources? Again, they call it grinding in video games. Like if you play World of Warcraft, you had to get a bunch of gold or something like that. But how did they make it so that could be fun? You're still doing work. You're still going to this quest and collecting this stuff. It's basically like you're working, but they made it to a way for you to be fun. So there's like a psychology behind that where like there's this whole flow state of like, oh, well, your character is getting better and better and your skills are getting better controlling your character with the abilities that they have through its controls, which is kind of like juggling, of course. There's certain tricks, you build up your tricks and your skills, and then you get to this flow state with like, now this is some playful structure that became fun, but it still work, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. In your video game design, do you have a particular type of game that you prefer to make?
Yes. And probably because it's very much like juggling. I like the roguelike genre a lot. Roguelike genre is basically if you die once, you have to start all over again and you lose all your progress. And
Challenging.
usually they're very challenging and very frustrating. And that's why I like them because it's like juggling a lot. It's like, okay, well, I'm getting slowly better at the skills and got a little bit further this time, but if I drop or if I mess up, I'm gonna start all over again. So I really like that genre of games. Um, some games to note to mention are Spelunky, Binding of Isaac, games like that. And there's so many of them. FTL, Risk of Rain. I don't know. There's so many games that are in the roguelike genre that are like that.
Thank you so much for sharing. What's your ideal world?
Yeah, there's so much changes that I want in the world to happen. Equality, of course. I'm a big person for equality, both for human and animal rights. I am a vegetarian, almost a vegan. So having that, having rights for, of course, every people, like minorities, LGBTQ, having spaces open for everybody, because as some people may have not known, um, segregation and racism is still something very prevalent in the world right now, especially with the past 4 or 5 years that we've seen with his presidency that has finally ended. um, but yeah, a lot of different changes in the roles I would like to see, both with a lot of that. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, there's a lot of things that need to change in the world. One with companies paying their fair share in taxes and stuff like that, and polluting less. The whole kind of lie that we've said how the consumer has to recycle and stuff isn't really our fault as much as it is companies not making the things we have to recycle. Um, of course, having access to more things like healthcare and stuff like that in America, at least. I don't know. There's so much to talk about that needs to be changed. But of course, having a more fair world for people that they can live their lives and be less cogs in the machine, where they have to work less and maybe they can play more would be nice.
Definitely. I
Um,
hear you expressing more accountability. I hear you expressing you want to see more expression of the individual, um,
mhm.
and also that, taking care of our environment and really thinking things end to end when it comes to process and design.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I do want to change in every individual to care more for each other and to be more passionate and more just, I don't know, just more considerate of each other. That's a big thing that needs to be changed. And there are those people that are like that, but there are also people that are very individualistic, who I think are products of the systems that they're in, though, which is something that needs to change. Like when capitalism were like this, people have to work a lot. Maybe they, I guess, lose certain mentalities, either from access to education, which has just been cut back over the past few decades, or just propaganda that they've been fed through companies and other stuff that is there because they want to be controlled. Like the companies want them to be controlled so they can make money off them. It's a lot of things that need to change in the world. It's hard to say how do you change all that, you know? The individual needs to become more smarter. And I guess the shift that I've seen in America is people want to become dumb, to become ignorant, because I guess that's like American pride and value or something. It's really stupid and I really hate it. Um, but in the past, I guess even with COVID, of course, people are against the vaccine and against science and stuff and getting a vaccine. Like, okay, well, we could have been out of this pandemic if, I know I'm getting political right now, but like we could have been out of things if people all worked together and were compassionate, wear a damn mask. The mask isn't for me, it's for you when I wear the mask. It's like I wear it because I care about you, not much less about me getting
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah, the logic gaps and our understanding of media and how to like there's a lot going on within the United States as a whole right now, as well as the world, then just gaps when it comes to education and using logic and the information that we process.
Yeah, definitely.
In your opinion, what can we do, or perhaps are you currently doing to support equity, diversity, and inclusion in our juggling, our flow arts communities?
Mhm. So I'm a board of director to the IJA. International Juggling Association. And recently we passed a DEI inclusiveness thing that where we do festivals and stuff. We kind of like we're trying to, I guess, screen people to be inclusive and to know when they're creating certain spaces, if they're organizing a festival or something for the EJ, to kind of check those
Yay!
things.
Celebration.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. So stuff like that, being a board of director for things like that and trying to be inclusive for just any ideas that are pitched, of course. I'm not an organizer to the festivals per se, so I don't really have a say who the performers are, but we are trying to be more inclusive to who gets on the shows. So, or who writes articles and trying to screen what articles get written, of course, and who they're written from and what perspectives. Doing things like that. Recently, over the summer, um, I I try to organize something for Pride Month for the EJ. So we do like a Pride collaboration video. So trying to do more collaboration videos like that, where it has a platform for people who don't usually have platforms for collabs, I think are important. And of course, just as a festival organizer in the past, just being inclusive to any and all people, of course. It's hard to say you're inclusive to everybody because if you do get that person who tries to not be inclusive, you gotta not be inclusive to them. And then you're being judged for not being inclusive, which is like, if you're gonna
Catch
be,
22.
yeah. But no, I want to be inclusive to people who have not had the ability to either be one for like trying to have access to juggling or something, or for two who've been discriminated for certain things, either color or for like orientation or something. Like that's very important to be inclusive with that, I think. And even with disabilities too, that's important to be inclusive with that too.
Thank you so much for sharing. If you were to come up with a interview question for yourself that I have not already asked you, what would it be?
Mm, I guess to maybe see where I'm going from now. You kind of asked it a little bit in the future, in the past, like what projects or things
What
I
are your
want to see myself in 5 years or 10 years from now, maybe, or something. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I have so much projects and goals and ideas that I'll take time and money, of course, and practice and um, getting those all to fruition maybe within my lifetime would be nice. Um, which is, I guess, nice to have a lot of projects and goals because then I have stuff I would always want to work on. Um, Projects wise, talking about inclusiveness, I've wanted to for the longest time to create just little juggling meetups around the San Jose area for low income families and kids to be able to come out and learn. This summer, I was really fortunate to have the opportunity with gigs that were offered to me where I would go out every day, or not every day, but at least 4 times a week, 3 different parks around San Jose. And I had the opportunity to teach juggling to kids who might not have had opportunities to do it. I got to meet a lot of cool people, a lot of cool kids, probably taught over like 1,000 people. And yeah, that was really fun, really cool. I want to try to see how I could continue doing that as a business. So maybe something that's accessible to those communities. How can I make that accessible? With the kids, of course, you take a circus class or something as a summer camp or something that's like hundreds of dollars. Most people can't afford that. How can you make that accessible to them? Trying to do that in a number of ways, I guess. One with YouTube videos for Diabolo. Two with trying to make an app for learning with 3D animated juggling tricks and Diabolo tricks, which is going to take a lot of time and effort and money. But I mean, I have the skills to set up the basis for it, so I'm trying to do that. 3 live streams on Twitch, which I'm trying to do. I kind of paused it over the summer because I've gotten so busy, but I'm going to try to do that again once I finish my gigs for this next few months up to Halloween. And also I do have a day tech job too, so it's kind of hard to follow up on all this stuff as well. So I'm trying to work a full-time tech job on top of juggling, of course, at the same time. So I'm very busy, but all those projects to come to fruition, as also mentioned with the Diego LED sticks, maybe making pivots with the sticks. I've recently been wondering if I should make the sticks Creative Commons access, so anybody can make the sticks and post that publicly with instructional videos of how to make the sticks. So maybe they're doing that. I'm not sure about that yet. Don't hold me accountable to that because I'm not sure if I'm going to do that part specifically, or maybe just improve the sticks and sell them as members still. So I'm not sure.
It's really cool to hear about your plans and your dreams, your vision to create this app and to make Diabolo learning accessible even more so than it already currently is being made by your content creation online and your classes and thinking next level. Before we sign out for the day from this episode, is there anything else you want to share with listeners?
Yeah, I mean, definitely if you're getting into juggling in the floor arts, don't be intimidated by the big tricks and stuff. I started somewhere to get to where I'm at now. A lot of juggling is mostly time spent learning how to do a trick. So if you think it's really overwhelming and impossible and there's somebody that's going to be better, maybe that could be overwhelming at first. I even say this to this date, feeling that way. Have fun with it. Like, have fun with what you're practicing. Get inspired. Go to festivals if you can. Meet people. I know it's kind of hard with COVID, but there's a lot of online videos to watch, a lot of online instructions, a lot of online just communities that you can join on Facebook and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I know this is a big statement for political reasons, but wear a mask or get vaccinated so we can go to festival sooner. One final thing too, all my social media is tagged as Draco the Juggler, including my website, dracothejuggler.com, Twitch, Instagram, YouTube. You can all search me by Draco the Juggler.
Yay. And if you want to connect more with Chris or you have questions for him, you have opinions, you want to know more about the Diabolo, you want to know more about Diabolo or teaching, you can connect with him by checking the show notes below where there's contact details along with other fun stuff. So check it out and we will see you next time. Do you want to keep the conversation going? Join the Art of Flow Facebook group to be part of a community discussing the episodes, sharing art, resources, and questions with each other. Thank you for listening and see you next time.